Good morning, guys. It's a little bit of a different one for me. I'm absolutely terrified of what this morning has in store for me. So I filmed a little montage this morning of me just sorting my morning out, which you would have just seen. It's currently Friday. The weather, by the way, stunning. However, next week looks terrible. I just don't understand the UK. Why tease us with this kind of weather? I don't understand, but that's why I'm in this beautiful dress, and maybe by the time that you're watching this, it might not be so nice out there. Oh, of course you come round and blow leaves while I'm speaking to my friends. That's fine. Anyway, yeah, this dress is from Primark, if anyone wants to know. I'm feeling like a heifer lump. I feel like I'm just gonna have to live in dresses at the moment because, wow! Alfie's just playing independently in the living room. I feel like I just have to live in dresses at the moment because it's the only thing that I feel remotely comfortable in. I mentioned it on my Instagram story the other day about me speaking about how I just feel like really insecure at the moment and I don't really want to film, but I feel like this is an important video for me to film. So today is actually my birth reflection from my first baby, Alfie, who is literally behind me. And if you didn't know, I'm having my second child in the beginning of August, hopefully at the beginning of August. And yeah, so I'm having a baby girl around then, and with my first birth, it wasn't a very positive experience at all. I had a very, very traumatic experience, and there are so many unanswered questions. I feel like I should have been more prepared with this, and I probably should have written down some questions that I really wanted to know. I honestly haven't, because I feel like my memory is so blurred from that period of time that I can't really think of anything to say. I know there's one question that I want to ask that I'm like really, really desperate to know the answer to, but as I said, I think my memory is just so blurred. I wouldn't know where to start with questions, so I'm kind of hoping that they take the lead on it and can kind of just go through everything that happened and why it happened. I feel like this is really important for me to heal. The last thing I want to do is go into my next birth with my daughter and be an absolute panicky mess. It is in the same hospital, so I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous, let's put it that way. Just changing location yet again because that TV is driving me nuts. Yeah, very nerve-wracking time. Don't really know what to expect. I am doing it virtually. It feels like 2 minutes ago I had this phone call with the lady, like arranging this and everything, and it was literally like March, beginning of March, which was 2 months ago, which is actually crazy because then I think in 2 months from now it will be the beginning of July and I will literally have like weeks of this pregnancy to go. I just don't really want to go in with any unresolved trauma. I really feel this is important and necessary for me to understand things, and I really know what to say. I'm a little bit speechless this morning because this is such a scary thing. I could have gone in and gone to the hospital and spoke to some midwives face to face, but I think this just works for me. The hospital is quite a while away from me, so I don't really want to make the drive, and I'm really glad that I made that decision now. I'm gonna try and potentially film some of it and maybe give you guys an insight if any of you want to do a birth debrief or a birth reflection, or you know, if any of you have been through a traumatic birth and you're wanting to know the process of it, then I think it would be beneficial for you guys to maybe see what they have to say and how it's structured, and you know, the benefits of a virtual meeting, so you don't have to go all the way to the hospital. So I'm going to try and film some bits. If I can't, then that's that. I can't. I'm not going to pressure myself. I've literally got like no makeup on. I don't know whether you can see through the light, but I've only got my eyebrows and a little bit of like bronzer and highlighter on my nose, and that's it, because a lot of people have said that it is very, very emotional, obviously understandably, so I don't want to like absolutely ball my makeup off. So I haven't really put much makeup on. I might not even cry. My hormones are all over the place at the moment anyway, so I may cry, but I feel like there's a lot that's blocked out, so I don't know, I'm really flustered. I'm really flustered this morning. But yeah, anyway, we are 28 weeks pregnant tomorrow. So baby girl is getting very big. This dress is from Primark. I'm pretty sure I already said that, didn't I? Okay guys, I'm cutting it close for time. I've got 4 minutes until I need to join this call because I read that you need to join it 10 minutes before. I've got my ice white mocha, which I've almost finished. I never normally get a large one, but my mum got me a large one, so I'm not complaining. I've got my Mac set up, so hopefully I can join the call through there. They sent me a link on my text messages to join this call. So, I really don't know how this is gonna go, but let's just hope. It won't let me click the link. Obviously, it won't let me click the bloody link. Why won't it let me click the link? Am I gonna have to do this on my phone? I always have technical issues. This is such an annoyance to me. I always have a technical problem.
Hi Daisy, can I just get you, if you wouldn't mind, just to confirm your date of birth?
Yeah, 21st of April 2000.
Perfect, thank you. So Daisy, what we hope to be able to do today is I've had a good look through your notes and made a record for myself. Hopefully we can talk through some timings of your previous birth experience and you can share anything with me that you want to.
Yeah.
And am I correct, Daisy, that you're currently pregnant now as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Lovely. Congratulations. How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, I'm fine now. It was, you know, a bit of a rocky start with it was just different.
Yeah, you go through that discussion around what your plans are for birth this time and anything that you want me to document on the summary that I write after this.
Okay.
All right. If at any point, Daisy, you want to stop, whether that's because you've had enough or whether actually sometimes talking about your experience can bring back lots of emotions, it's very much guided by you. So if you think that's enough for today, that's not a problem. You just let me know.
Okay.
Right. Was there anything in particular, Daisy, that hopefully we'll cover, but just so I'm aware of as we go through, that you wanted to talk about or had questions around?
Yeah, there was one thing, and it was to do with the fact that, see, it's really difficult for me to actually remember. I feel like my brain has sort of blocked out a lot of this, and I'm sure that's probably quite common with people who have had sort of traumatic births. But I remember going into the hospital at about 8 a.m. and I remember them apologising to me and my mum and saying, "We're really sorry, we've made a mistake. You were supposed to have an extra scan or something, which means that you have to give birth on labour ward." But the only question that I can actually think of that comes to mind is, what did that mean? Why did I then have to go into labour ward because I didn't get an extra scan? Do you know what I mean? Like that's the only thing, because that's when it went downhill. That's when everything went wrong, and that to me was like when the beginning of it. And I don't know how it would have gone if that didn't necessarily happen, or if I refused that. Do you know what I mean? I at the time it may have made a little bit more sense to me, but now when I look back, I'm like, I actually have no idea what they meant by that. Like, so that's the only question I can actually think of that comes to mind, because I've been trying to prepare in my head for what I'm going to ask, but there's so much I can't remember. So that's the only thing that really comes to mind. But other than that, I wouldn't say there's anything else in particular I'd like to focus on.
That's absolutely fine. And yes, when I looked at your notes, Daisy, so just thinking about that, it looked like you'd had a growth scan at about 30, well, they'd arranged on around that 35-week mark. Yeah. And then you'd had another one at 37 weeks, I believe. Because actually when you were seeing your community midwife, when they were measuring your bump, they felt that it just wasn't growing as much as they had expected. Now, after the second growth scan, Daisy, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like they sent you to the day unit and a doctor reviewed you there and said, everything's fine, you can go home, etc. Then when you came in labour, one of the coordinating midwives had a look at that scan, and actually that second scan that you had, Daisy, and I will go back into it in a minute, it looked like, yes, baby had grown, but not significantly. So there was a concern that actually perhaps baby wasn't growing quite as much as we would have expected between the two growth scans, but baby had grown, so that was reassuring. But when that coordinating midwife had a chat with the lead on on for that shift, they both agreed that actually, in their opinion, there should have been another growth scan before you came in labour.
Right, okay.
Because we want to check that baby is growing as we would expect.
Yeah.
And also, the reason they then would have recommended labour ward is because we actually don't know potentially how well baby may cope with labour.
Yeah.
So if babies are a little bit on the smaller side, they've often got less reserves than a bigger baby.
Yeah.
So they may not cope with labour quite as well. So we need to monitor them continuously.
Yeah, okay.
Which we can only do on labour ward.
Okay.
But that is really hard when you've gone to your scans, you've gone to your appointments, everyone said this is all fine, and then you come in labour and actually they've changed your birth plan completely.
And so, I did prepare for that, and I prepared for. I've never been somebody who's been against a section. I've never been somebody who's against anything. Like, I was very, very much preparing myself for, right, something could happen. It's my first birth as well, so obviously it's a big deal for your body, and I'm not naive to know that you do a birth plan and then it comes around and everything changes and goes out the window. And I completely understood that. I think it was the fact, like you say, right up until that point where I had gone in the morning expecting it to all be fine, because I don't know, it wasn't like there was an emergency with the baby where it was like, oh my god, there's an emergency, and it was a worry for me that the baby wasn't okay. It was kind of like it felt like it wasn't anything to do with me or my baby. It was just that they'd made a mistake and then they had to follow like some sort of procedure to go with it. And I think that's what affected me a lot, because I was like, well, that's not my fault. Do you know what I mean? It's not my fault that, and I understand that things go wrong. I completely sympathise with that. But I think during that time, that's when I hadn't slept that whole night because I was obviously in labour, and then I came in, they then sent me home that same day, and then I was like in my head like, right, okay, well now everything's gone out the window and I need to prepare for what I need to prepare, and it was just a bit of a shock, I think, because I prepared for like maybe an emergency situation, but I hadn't prepared for a complete change in my birth plan that wasn't necessarily an emergency, if that makes sense. Yeah, I guess that's maybe something I need to just like take forward with me as well. But I think it was also because as a mother, you kind of know. So like, I knew he was fine. I just knew it in my gut. I knew that he was a normal size. I knew that he was a normal weight. I knew that there was absolutely nothing wrong with him. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. And there could have obviously been a chance that I was wrong. But back at that time, I just kind of let everybody take over what I thought. And I was like, they know, that's fine, I'm just going to let them take over. And it is quite sad, really, because this time I'm now like, well, I don't want to then go in with that strength that I didn't have last time, actually be wrong, and then something go wrong, and then I'm like, well, that's now my fault. Do you know what I mean? I'm throwing so much information at you, but this is like a lot of stuff that's like coming out of my brain.
And Daisy, you're not alone. Often I speak to many families at this stage. It's often you have your baby, you're so busy then focusing on your baby, and life just becomes hectic, and then actually you get pregnant again, and it's when you are pregnant again that you start to think, what happened last time? What do I want this time? So you are not alone. This is normal. Okay, good. And I think you're absolutely right. So last time they recommended labour ward because, and it was the right thing to recommend when I had a look at your scans and things, because we had some concerns about, actually, we don't know for definite. Yes, baby is fine. Baby's monitoring looked good. All of that was reassuring. I mean, new baby had been growing, but just not quite as much as So to err on the side of caution, they said, actually, because of all of those things, labour ward CTG. This time round, Daisy, are you having any growth scans that you know about? Have they planned any?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't been told any.
What I'll do, I know you've got... Have they made your consultant midwife appointment as well, Daisy? Have you got a consultant midwife appointment?
No, I don't think so.
No, okay, fine. So what I'll do, I'll email. Having that knowledge before you go in is what's important, because like you said, if things have changed in pregnancy and someone explains to you, this is what we found, this is the risk and this is what we're recommending, you can get your head around that. If you go in labour, like you said, it's not an emergency, they're telling you actually baby's fine, but because of the scans you had a few weeks ago, we actually want to change the plans. That is harder. So I think let's try and see if we can get as much information beforehand. Now they may say actually there's no indication for growth scans this pregnancy, baby is growing as we would expect, we're happy with everything, and then we don't need to be putting in extra intervention.
So what if I do have to give birth on labour ward? I think I'd be okay with that. I think I just need to be, I don't want to be strapped to a bed the way that I was with my son. Like, I don't want to be strapped there, constantly monitored. Like, it's, do you know what I mean? I just don't want to do that. Like, I want it to be different. I'm getting emotional.
Oh, no, and Daisy, I said to you at the start, this is expected, okay? And so the reason about the blood loss, let's look at that blood loss situation, okay? When we are thinking about blood loss in birth, we have three kind of areas that we're thinking about. Is it coming from trauma? So is there a wound somewhere that is bleeding significantly that needs stitching, that might need other intervention to help it stop?
My camera battery is literally about to die. But how that went, I ended up filming a little bit, which I will include. You probably would have already seen. I've only just got off the call. It's coming up to 1 o'clock. We got on the call at 11:30. I have no words for how much that has just healed my soul. You would have seen I literally got emotional within the first 5 minutes. I did not expect that to happen. I heard that it can be emotional, but for some reason I thought that I wasn't going to get emotional, and lo and behold, I was crying the entire time. Obviously I didn't record the whole hour and a half because I just wouldn't have been able to cut that. There was a lot of unresolved trauma that I feel I've managed to work through a lot of it just by sitting and speaking to that midwife who was so incredibly lovely. And I just feel like I know so much more now about what had happened and why it had happened. If anyone is wanting to go for a birth reflection or a birth debrief, whatever it's called, if you feel like you had a traumatic birth and you need that closure, please do it. That is one of the best things I've ever done. It brought back so many unwanted memories that I needed to work through to be able to go through with this birth again. I've got such a good birth plan in place, which I'll get into a little bit later, I think, probably because my camera is on its last legs. I don't have time to explain it now, but so many questions that I didn't realise I had, and a lot around breastfeeding that I didn't realise I had, like trauma that I didn't realise I had around breastfeeding. And I remember something like, you guys will probably know my friend Megan on TikTok. We've been like really, really good friends for like a year now. And I didn't realise like how much she'd done for me before I even knew her. But I felt like I had no support with breastfeeding. And she started her account like around the same time as I did. And I remember being sat in that hospital bed, searching up breastfeeding support, because I felt like I didn't have any and I was on my own. And I was on TikTok, watching Megan's TikTok, and I felt like she was my only supporter. And I didn't even know her, and now she's like one of my best friends, and I just said to her then, I was like, that was a memory I didn't even remember that I had. And like, I just want to thank you, because if it wasn't for you and the videos that you made back then, like, I don't know how I would have done it. I felt like I just had no support. So that was like a crazy revelation, because I completely forgot that had even happened until then. But that was so incredibly worth it. I've been referred to the psychology team to sort of go through a little bit more of like a therapy session before my next birth. We've put a plan in place as to how I want this labour to go and how much more control I want to be this time. She was so understanding, that lovely midwife I just spoke to. And yeah, I feel like my 21-year-old heart has been healed. Even just from that one talk, I feel so much more relaxed and understood, and I just can't recommend it enough to anybody who has suffered in the way that I have with birth trauma. My battery's literally going to die, but I can't recommend it enough. Okay, I'm feeling a little bit better now. I will go a little bit more into detail later on in this video. My sunglasses are absolutely filthy. But I'm just going to go to my mum's now to get Alfie. I think I'm just going to sit in the garden. She's got a really nice garden. It's so sunny outside, so I'm just going to sit there, have a chill, have a chat with my mum about how everything went, let Alfie have a little play, and then I'm going to come home later on. So I'm just excited for a really chill day. My camera is charged. So yeah, I will chat to you guys in a bit. Good morning. It has been a few days since I picked up the camera. It is now Wednesday. I think I really needed to process that information about everything that happened on Friday with the birth reflection. I feel so much better even over the last few days about birth and about the baby. I have a lot to update you on, so I'm gonna finish this video today and get it edited and uploaded as quickly as possible. I bought this new water bottle from Primark because my Stanley Cup gives me the ick. Out of nowhere, it just started. I'm really weird with like sensory stuff, and I put something in my story yesterday about how I'm feeling at the moment with, like, I'm just so aggy if one thing goes wrong for me throughout the day, and I'm noticing it more with like sensory stuff. I will look at a piece of food and be like, I can't eat it for like literally no reason. I was convinced there was plastic in my food yesterday. And the same happened with my Stanley Cup. One day I was just drinking out of it, and then the next day I was like, do you know what? I can't drink out of this anymore. It's giving me the ick. So I bought this one from Primark, which will inevitably give me the ick in about 2 days. The paleness of my hands compared to my face. I really need to tan. I actually just can't bother. But then I say I need to tan, but then I've got, look at that. That's tan from my face drops. Really stunning. I've just been using my little TikTok shop walking pad. I just made a video on it, but it's just not doing well. Like, if you're a creator, you'll know that TikTok shop just does not do well, like 90% of the time, and it's so frustrating. But yeah, I absolutely love this thing. I've been obsessed with it. But I'm just gonna sit and like actually fully go through and like sort of dissect what happened in my birth reflection and tell you some of the things that I didn't even realise that happened within my own birth. So I need to put this group chat on silent. Hold on. Sorry, Megan and Jessica. My fans come first. So if you would have watched the first part of this video, you probably would have seen the footage where I sat and spoke about my birth reflection with the midwife that was conducting my birth reflection. So it was a virtual birth reflection. I think I have mentioned that you can go and have one face to face. Just made more sense for me to do a virtual one. So as you can see in the video, I got very, very emotional, and I needed a few days to process what had happened and how I felt. I was going to bed every single night dreading that I had to give birth again, which is such a shame. I didn't want to feel like that, which is the reason why I was referred to the birth reflections team at my hospital. I was referred when going to my, I think it was like my 12-week midwife appointment, or like the first midwife appointment that you go to where they ask you a load of questions. That was when I was referred to the birth reflections team. I'm pretty sure you can have a birth reflection for any birth at all. You doesn't have to be trauma, it doesn't have to be C-section, it doesn't have to be forceps like it was for me. It can literally be that you kind of blacked out from the pain, as a lot of women do. I know I definitely did. And you just want to sit down and go through timestamps. That is basically what a birth reflection is, where they go through timestamps and ask you how things felt. I didn't expect to get as emotional as I did, but it was really, really interesting because there's so much that I had forgotten about my birth. So if you do want to do that, I'm pretty sure if you just search up your birth reflections team, I apologise, this tripod keeps falling down. It's the worst tripod I've ever bought. It was like 30 quid off Amazon. Everyone said it was amazing and it's terrible, so I won't be purchasing that one again. Anyway, I'm pretty sure if you just search up your birth reflections team for your particular hospital that you gave birth in, you can find an email or a contact number and ask for a birth reflection. So that's probably what I would have had to have done if I wasn't pregnant, but it was just because I had so much unresolved trauma, and a lot of unresolved trauma comes from unresolved memories that you could have potentially forgotten about while you were in labour. As I said, sometimes the pain can really block out your memory, and that is definitely what happened with me. But the first thing I'll say to you is there any questions that you would like to ask? And the first question that I asked was, well, the first and only really, because it was the only one that I could actually think of. Why did my birth happen the way it did? Because I was told at 8 a.m. when I'd been labouring all night. I went to the hospital at 8 a.m. and they told me that I wasn't allowed the birth that I planned to have, and it was due to their mistake. And I never really truly understood what the mistake was, because I was in so much pain. I wasn't even listening to what they were saying. And I was saying to her, look, I'm not naive enough to know that birth plans go out the window. I'm not silly like that. But I expected my birth plan to go out the window if there was something wrong with the baby or if there was something wrong with me, and not for it to be under the hospital's mistake. And she explained to me that I went in for a growth scan at 35 weeks. Then I went back in for a growth scan at 37 weeks. I then was taken down to the day unit, which I remember really, really well. And I sat there for like 4 hours with my mum. And then a doctor saw me after 4 hours and was like, yeah, you're fine, go home. Basically what should have happened then is the morning that I came into go into labour, like 3 weeks later, they assessed my scans and they basically realised that doctor should never have sent me home, and I should have been scanned again, and I should have been offered an additional scan at 39 weeks, which I wasn't. And at that point it was too late to scan me. So they didn't feel like that it was a safe option for me to give birth while not being monitored. I was very hypnobirth. I was very into hypnobirthing. I loved the idea of gravity doing its thing, of moving around, of being in water. And I was literally strapped to a bed the entire time. And then when my baby was born, he was 7 pounds 5. So all of that was completely unnecessary. And I think that's what has been bugging my mind and the question that I wanted to ask. So she just explained that to me, and I said, like, I understand that mistakes do happen, but it changed my whole life. It literally changed my whole life, and how I see birth and how I see my body and how my body couldn't cope, and it was all because of your hospital. So I feel like it was nice that it was explained to me, because my brain hadn't really understood why I was monitored that entire time when my baby was born 7-5. But they did obviously explain it to me at the time. It was just, like I said, the trauma had really, really blocked it out. So she was then going through timestamps with me, and also at that point I was crying, like, straight away. And if you think you are not going to cry in your birth reflection, please don't think that. I was prepared in the sense that I didn't do my makeup. Like, I didn't do my makeup properly that morning because I had a feeling that I could potentially cry. I thought I was going to cry maybe like once or twice, shed a few tears. I was bawling my eyes out the entire time. And the midwife that I had was so lovely, so comforting towards me. She was saying to me, like, no, you need to let this out. This is the whole point of this. But essentially, she ended up referring me to the psychology unit instead of, well, not instead of anything really, because, well, you have a birth reflection, but it's basically just to go through your birth and the timestamps and kind of talk it all through. Whereas the psychology unit for maternity can actually pick apart that trauma. So I've done like the first step, if that makes sense, by doing the birth reflection and remembering a lot and resolving my mind in that way. But I haven't actually gone through the therapy of how to get over it, even though I feel like I probably would be okay now just from that. She did say that she was going to refer me to the psychology team just so I can have a little bit more intense therapy and help to prepare me for my next birth. So we were going through things, and the other thing that I got to talk about, which I've said a million times on TikTok and I've spoke about it on here as well, but I'll never ever ever live it down, and that was that anaesthetist that I had, and he was so horrible to me. Turned around and said to me, well, loads of other women in the world give birth. And I was like, excuse me, you're a male. You're a literal male. And you are telling me, a woman, a female, that has to push a whole ass baby out of her, that loads of other women in the world do it. Well, loads of other men in the world get circumcised, mate. Do you want to get circumcised? Because I will happily take this. Oh, sorry. That was really uncalled for, but the way that he invalidated my feelings is something that I will never forget. And she was sort of apologising to me and just saying, like, look, we're so sorry, like, about the way that he spoke to you. Sorry, I'm just itching my armpits there. She was like, I'm so sorry about the way that he spoke to you, and like that should never have happened and stuff like that. And we were just going through stuff, and I was talking about the catheter and how horrible, that was the worst experience for me. And then she was kind of asking me stuff. She was asking me things about what I want for my next birth, because they've advised me that I have to actually give birth on labour ward again, just due to the blood loss that I had. And she explained to me that my bleeding actually came from all three areas. They call it the 3 T's, and if it just comes from sort of a wound, then it's not considered as dangerous. But because mine came from internal tears, external tears, and the wound, and my placenta like not clamping down and all of that, she was like, you are at risk of hemorrhaging. So she said, you know, we would advise that you give birth on labour ward. And at first, I remember when my midwife did say that to me, I actually did not want to go through with that, and I refused it. Now I'm thinking about it, I do think it is probably the safest thing for me and baby. However, I did say to her, I want it to be under my conditions. So she was explaining to me, I did not know any of this back when I was giving birth with Alfie. You can adjust the lighting in labour ward. There is a pool in labour ward, and most women don't use it because if you have a high risk pregnancy, you're more likely not going to give birth in water. If you have a low risk pregnancy and a moderate to high risk birth, you can give birth in water. This is what she was explaining to me. And there is one pool, and it's normally not in use. So she said, you know, you could potentially use that. And the other thing that she was explaining to me is, she said, in the scenario, in the event that baby girl has to be monitored in the same way that Alfie was, and trust me, I did say to her as well, I was like, if they tell me that she's too small, I'm not doing it. I said, I'm not being monitored, because I genuinely do not trust everything that happened to me, and that was all down to you guys saying that he was too small, and I knew in my gut that he wasn't, and if I know in my gut that she's not, I will go against that advice. And that is just me personally. That is what I want to do and what I feel is best for my body. If I feel that she's too small and I feel for a second they are right, I will agree to being monitored. Anyway, she was just saying, like, in the event that she could potentially have to be monitored the same way that Alfie did, she was like, there are actually monitors that mean that you are not strapped to the bed. It means you can walk around. It means, you know, you're free. And she said, but there's usually only one or two of those available. So she said, when you go into labour, if you do need to be monitored, you will be made aware of that, obviously, before you go into labour this time, which is great. So she said, when you go into labour, just call up the hospital and make them aware that you are in labour and you want, it's like teresmonial or something like that. I can't remember. If you're a midwife or a doctor or whatever, you're probably laughing at me, but it's the monitoring that means you're not strapped to a bed. She said you can call up and basically just request that, which I will 100%, that has been stuck in my mind since she said it. So I did get quite a lot of like useful tips as well for my next birth with it, which I didn't actually realise was a huge part of it. So that is definitely something to consider if you are having another baby, that you can kind of start deciphering your birth plan much more in advance than you would if you didn't have a birth reflection. There was other things that she went through with me. She actually, I don't know, I feel like I have spoke about this before on my TikTok, but I don't know why I completely forgot that I had a hormone drip. And I always see these videos of people and they're like, oh, I survived like a hormone drip and stuff, and it's always been a thing in my head, and I've been like, did I have that? Like, I had no idea whether I had that or whether I didn't. I may have spoke about it really early on in my TikTok because obviously it would have been like fresh in my mind then, but I feel like again that was sort of something I blacked out. But I do remember them sort of mentioning it, and then I remember being laid in the bed and the contractions in my back, even though I'd had the epidural, the pain in my back was insane. There were no contractions at the front, but in the back, insane, and that was with the epidural and the hormone drip. So if you've had a hormone drip and you haven't had an epidural, girl, you are insanely strong, because that was one of the most painful parts, and I couldn't even feel half of my contractions. But I found that really interesting when she was telling me about it, because like I said, it was something that I literally completely blocked out. And then we got to the part in theatre, and I said theatre was great for me. I think the only thing that I would say about theatre that wasn't good was the support from my mum. She was watching me and she thought that I was literally on my deathbed. Like, she didn't expect me to live through it because of how it looked and how much blood I was losing, and she said that nobody reassured her, and I think that's a trauma that stuck with her. And obviously Charlie's my birth partner this time, and I don't want something like that to happen to him. So we've kind of put a plan in place to keep the birth partner really updated with every single step, which should be done anyway, but obviously I understand they are just trying to get things done in that situation. I feel like that is kind of a very brief overview of how it went. I would highly recommend. I would do it again with her birth, even if her birth is as straightforward and as simple as in and out. I still think I would do it again, just because, like I said, that memory loss is so real and you don't realise it until you've experienced it, and then you look back and you're like, I don't remember anything. So I would definitely get in touch with like your birth reflections team, or if it's something that you're really interested in doing, I would highly recommend doing it. But yeah, I think that is kind of all I wanted to say on it all, because I've sat on it for the last few days, and every night I've gone to bed so much calmer thinking about birth, so much more ready. The first time round when I was like obviously pregnant with Alfie, I was so calm about birth because I didn't know what to expect, and this time I have such different expectations, and I think that was one of the main things that was scaring the living daylights out of me every single day. I was terrified to give birth again, and now I feel like a whole weight has been lifted off my shoulders. So in that sense, I definitely do think that it's worth doing. Anyway, I think I'm gonna go back on my treadmill, do an hour on there. I'm watching Baby Reindeer as well, if anybody has seen that. I'm really enjoying it so far, but I'm literally like one episode in. I think there's like 3 episodes, but it's really good. It's definitely my thing. I love anything serial killer, stalker, anything like that. I'm a crazy gal, but that doesn't mean that I do it. I need to stop digging myself a hole. But yeah, if you have any more questions about my birth reflection, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Message me, like DM me on Instagram, or leave a comment on my TikTok about it, and I'll try and get back to you on there. Yeah, I'm gonna go and enjoy a nice peaceful walk on my treadmill. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this kind of content, please remember to subscribe to my channel, like this video, comment down below if you wish to do so, and other than that, I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.